All right, in this video, I'm gonna be showing you how to do the perfect melty blonde with a natural base that blends really nice into a bright blonde. You can see this is her before. She's got quite a bit of grow out. I think she had said it had been over a year since she had her hair done. And you can see her ends are pretty light already. We just need to adjust the whole grown out area. So I'm using Fanola Lightener, and I'm gonna start with 20 volume for my developer. That way I've got plenty of time and I'm not gonna be in a rush. I prefer starting with 20 volume up the back of the head and then switching to 30 on the front. So I'm taking my first section and clipping everything up out of my way. Now I'm slicing a section and then I'm gonna go through and weave through it. So anything that looks like too thick, I'm just gonna drop it. And then I'm getting my Framar foils on my foiling board. Lay down this section and I'll start applying the lightener. I really like using a foiling board up the back of the head until I can get good tension on the foil without it. And now I'm gonna be doing the same exact thing. I'm gonna clip the hair up, take the next section. I'm probably leaving maybe 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch between each section. So I'm going through, getting a nice little piece, applying the lightener, and I just feather it up. Back here in the back, she had a lot of darkness, so I'm gonna apply it a little bit more liberally. But as I'm working my way up the head, I'm gonna start feathering the lightener to the top because I know that I'm gonna go back in and melt everything. So same thing, I'm going through and weaving the section, getting my foil on the foiling board. Laying the hair on the foil and then really saturating that hair. Anytime there's a lot of blonde already on the bottom, I'm just moving that really blonde hair out of the way. I'm not going to be overlapping the lightener to prevent damaging her hair that's already been bleached. Okay, so now that I've arrived to the occipital bone, I'm gonna be starting to kind of divide the head in half. So I'm gonna do, on the same section, I'm gonna do 2 foils, and I'm kind of going up the head in a diagonal. So I already did the one on the left side and now I'm doing the one on the right side. But other than that, everything stays the same. So you can see that diagonal section, and anytime you're working in a diagonal, what you're doing is really creating a really soft blend. So I use diagonal sections all the time when I'm highlighting because I love a really blended, melty look. So same thing, I've weaved that section and lay the hair on the foiling board and apply the lightener. And you can see how I just kind of like brush it up and turn the brush to the side a little bit, and that really helps to diffuse the lightener. And I'm going to be doing the same thing over on the right side. And then I just fold up that section a little bit to really apply the lightener. That piece the ends weren't as light, so I did saturate those ends, but I'm using my discretion on when to do that. All right, so going in and weaving everything. Applying the lightener, brushing up to the root to really feather everything up so there's no lines. And same thing, I'm going to be doing that same thing up the head the rest of the way. At this point, her head shape acts as the foiling board, so I no longer need it. I'm able to get all the right tension and saturation that I need just by laying the foil on her head. Okay, I'm finally to the top of the back of her head. I'm still doing everything the exact same way, weaving, getting tiny little baby lights, and then applying the lightener, making sure everything is really saturated to get a nice even lift, and feathering it to the top, and then feathering it to her ends, making sure to leave out those really blonde pieces. All right, and the back is done. Now that the foil work is done on the back of the head, I'm gonna go through and just tip out her ends. And what I mean by that is I'm going to use some of the remaining lightener to just freehand paint on her ends. So this is just gonna kick out any warmth and bump up her blonde a tiny little bit. It's not in a foil, so I'm not worried about damage or anything like that. Okay, now I'm mixing up some fresh lightener, and I'm gonna be using 30 volume for the front of her hair. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is make sure I have her hair parted where she parts it. So she parts her hair down the middle, so that's where I have it parted. And now I'm taking a triangle section right at her front hairline, and I'm gonna pull that to the side for her money piece, and I'm gonna do that last. I like to do the money piece last, that way if it needs to sit on longer, it can. I could go ahead and pull all the foils and just let that money piece sit if I needed to, because I need that money piece to be really bright, and I don't wanna be rushed to pull those foils. taking this section right along her hairline and I weaved it. And this is gonna look so pretty when her hair is pulled back in a ponytail. Making sure everything is nice and saturated and then leaving out those really pale ends. Okay, so I'm following that foil as my guide and grabbing a section right behind that. And what I'm gonna be doing is kind of following that section. So it's gonna be working diagonally and then it's gonna turn into horizontally. So eventually the foils will be horizontal along her part at the top. Okay, so here you can kind of see that the foils are starting to turn and they're going from almost horizontal, really diagonal right by her face, and they're starting to gradually turn to be horizontal. Now we're working towards a horizontal section to get a lot of coverage. So you can see now we're pretty much horizontal and we're doing the same thing, going through and weaving to get some tiny little pieces. We definitely want this to grow out really softly in case she happens to go another year between appointments. Saturating really well and feathering it. Okay, so this is the last little section on the left side of her head. Getting some tiny little baby lights and making sure this will be nice and saturated. How many times do you think I've said saturated already? Just a little bit of lightener where that hair was a little brassy, making sure that foil is nice and tight, and then we're done. So moving on to the right side of her head, we're gonna be doing everything the exact same on this side of the head. So getting that weave along her hairline, and then you'll see we're gonna be doing the same exact thing, working along that same diagonal and then working our way towards a horizontal section. Okay, so I went ahead and spared you through the rest of that side, but now we're at the top of this section and we're doing it the same exact way, a nice weave, getting little tiny little highlights and really saturating all the way to create a really nice even blonde. Okay, the last little foil here on her right side. And we're doing everything the exact same that we've been doing. Okay, on to the money piece. So I'm going to take a really thin little section, the closest to her hairline. And I'm gonna drop anything that looks too thick, so it's nice and fine. Brush down those little baby hairs and apply the lightener only to where her hair is dark. She already has a lot of blonde by her face, so I'm making sure not to overlap because the hair all around the hairline is really fragile and we don't want any broken pieces. Okay, so I'm gonna be not leaving out like any hair here. The next section is basically directly behind that first one. So we're not dropping any hair between the foils. They're gonna be back to back. And then I'm gonna go through and weave, drop out any pieces that look too thick to me. And same thing, so apply the lightener to where the hair is dark. Really be careful to avoid where the hair is already really blonde. Same thing, this foil is directly behind the last. Go in and weave and apply the lightener. Okay, now I'm going through the hair on the sides of her head and just freehanding any pieces that look a little bit dark or a little bit brassy with the remaining lightener just to bump them up a tiny bit. And also this helps open up the cuticle so that it grabs onto the toner a little bit better. Okay, so now time for the custom melt. I'm using Redken Shades 7in and 7in equal parts for her base. I love using Redken shades for toning, melting, all that stuff. And I also really like using the Goldwell Colorance. And so we're gonna be using Goldwell Colorance for the glaze for her ends. So after I've got her all shampooed, I brush everything out and section her hair where she parts it. And then I'm going in and adding the root melt to her hair. So I always start where the hair is parted and then I start going through the hair as well. And you can kind of see here that the shape is starting to come out. I really like doing the teardrop shape. So it kind of gradually gets larger towards the back of the head. Making sure to really saturate everything to make sure there are no foil lines, and this is going to be so melty and soft. I usually do this first, I just forgot to because I was being filmed, but I'm going to section out all of the hair around her face. I want to keep that super bright, and I want to make sure not to get any of the darker color on that, so I'm going to keep that sectioned out. I'm using a level 7 to do her melt because that's her natural level. And then back there in the back, I'm dragging it down a little bit more, you can see. So I'm probably dragging it down like 2 to 3 inches in the back and probably ½ inch to 1 inch in the front to start. And then you'll see as time goes on, I start to drag it down a little bit more. Okay, now I'm applying the final toner on the mids and ends, and this is Goldwell Colorance 10BS and 10P. This is one of my favorite glazes for a really bright blonde. It's so pretty and cool, and it's cool without making it any darker. If you're a hairstylist, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So with my toner, I'm being really sure to saturate and kind of move the hair around in my palm to make sure every little piece is getting covered. I really like to work it in there. And then you'll see I use my hands a lot to kind of comb through everything, really disperse the product and work it through. Okay, so now that everything is on, I'm using my hands to really melt everything together. I love a processing shot. Okay, using my bioprogramming devices to blow dry, and I'm also using the bioprogramming curling iron here. These are the 7D ones. I'm gonna make a whole other video on these, so check back for that. I'm obsessed with them. Okay, some Moroccan oil hairspray. I love the Moroccan oil hairsprays because they're not crunchy at all. They're really soft and touchable. And then I'm using my fingers to brush everything out. I like using my fingers to brush everything out at the end. Peep my sister in the back there. She didn't know she was still in the frame. But you can see it got super light and melty, and oh my gosh, look at that. It's so bright, so pretty, and you can't see where the highlights begin or end. Obsessed.